A millionaire suffers a terrible car accident on a deserted road. While no one appears to help her, a stray dog unexpectedly emerges. Without hesitation, it drags her for 300 meters, facing challenges along the way. The sun had barely risen when Eleanor Thompson gazed out the window of her home in Aspen, watching the first snowflakes fall on the mountains. Her brown eyes, marked by time, reflected a mixture of melancholy and determination. At 72, she had built a business empire that had made her one of the most influential women in that region of Colorado. But on that January morning, all her fortune seemed insignificant in the face of the emptiness she felt. Walter, her husband of more than 4 decades, sat at the kitchen table absent-mindedly stirring his breakfast. The silence between them was heavy, laden with unspoken words and accumulated resentments. The previous night's argument still echoed in the walls of the simple house they chose to maintain, despite all the wealth they possessed. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. You never listened to me, Eleanor. Walter's words from the night before still reverberated in her mind. It's always been business first. And now, what's left for us besides a house full of silence? Eleanor adjusted her wool coat, a gift from her first successful store, and decided she needed fresh air. The mountains had always been her refuge in moments of doubt, and now more than ever, she needed that solitude to organize her thoughts. "I'm going for a drive," she announced dryly, picking up her car keys. Walter merely nodded without lifting his eyes from the newspaper. Years ago, he would have insisted on accompanying her, concerned about Aspen's treacherous roads. Now only silence answered. On her way to the garage, Eleanor passed through the snow-covered garden, where they used to spend entire afternoons planning the future. She remembered how Walter had supported her at the beginning of her career, when she opened her first craft store. Over time, one store became 2, then 10, and soon she was running a chain of stores throughout Colorado. As she got into the car, the radio automatically tuned to the local station, where a deep voice warned of an approaching heavy snowstorm. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, but her pride spoke louder. She had faced worse storms in her business life. A snowstorm wouldn't scare her. As she drove along the winding roads that snaked through the mountains, a strange noise caught her attention coming from the trunk. Stopping at a safe shoulder, she decided to investigate. To her surprise, she found an old diary, its pages yellowed by time. Seated in the driver's seat, she began to leaf through the notebook. The pages contained detailed accounts of rescues in the Aspen Mountains, stories of courage and determination that made her heart race. One annotation in particular caught her attention. "In the mountains, there is no pride worth more than a life. True value lies in knowing when to retreat and when to persist." The wind began to blow harder, and the first signs of the announced snowstorm began to manifest. The car's dashboard lights flickered irregularly, a warning that Eleanor, in her characteristic stubbornness, chose to ignore. The road ahead split into 2 paths. To the right, the safer and busier route. To the left, a shorter path but known for its dangerous curves. On any other day, Eleanor would have chosen prudence, but today, her mind was clouded by thoughts about Walter, about her life choices, and about the weight of loneliness that seemed to grow with each passing day. She looked once more at the diary on the passenger seat, its pages now open to an account of the importance of humility in the face of nature's power. For a brief moment, she considered turning back and returning home, to Walter, to the safety of the familiar. But something inside her, perhaps the same spirit that had led her to success in business, urged her to press on. The snowstorm intensified rapidly, transforming the landscape into a white veil that made visibility difficult. The car's lights continued to flicker erratically, and a strange sound began to come from the engine. Eleanor gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling her hands numb from the cold that was beginning to penetrate the interior of the vehicle. In her mind, the words from the diary mingled with memories of recent arguments with Walter. How much of her life had she dedicated to work? How many precious moments had she lost in the name of success? And now, amid the increasingly heavy snowfall, these questions seemed to gain even greater weight. The snowstorm increased in intensity as Eleanor continued her journey along the winding road. Wind gusts shook the car as if it were a leaf in the wind, and visibility diminished with each moment. Amidst the intense white of the landscape, her mind wandered to 30 years ago, when she and Walter were just a young couple full of dreams. She remembered the day she opened her first store, a small space in downtown Aspen. Walter had spent weeks helping to renovate the place, painting walls and installing shelves. "This is just the beginning, my love," he said, kissing her forehead as they admired the newly installed sign together. At the time, the gleam in his eyes reflected the same enthusiasm she felt. A strong jolt brought Eleanor back to the present. The car was starting to have more problems, and the dashboard was flashing like a malfunctioning Christmas tree. She tried to turn on the radio again, seeking information about the storm, but could only pick up static. The oppressive silence was broken only by the howling of the wind and the irregular noise of the engine. Her thoughts returned to the diary found in the trunk. Who could have left it there? The rescue stories in the mountains now seemed like an omen she had stubbornly chosen to ignore. One of the passages she had quickly read came back to her mind. "The mountains do not forgive arrogance, but they reward humility with their beauty." The cell phone in her pocket had no signal, and the cold was beginning to penetrate through all the cracks in the car. Eleanor turned up the heater, but the air coming out was getting weaker. Her hands, once firm on the steering wheel, now trembled slightly, not just from the cold, but also from the growing anxiety that was beginning to take over her body. Amidst the white curtain of snow, something caught her attention. They looked like footprints in the snow, too large to be from a common animal in the region. For a moment, Eleanor felt as if she was being watched, a sensation that made her heart race even more. The shadows of the trees on the sides of the road seemed to dance with the wind, creating mysterious shapes that her tired mind tried to decipher. Another jolt, this time stronger, made the car skid slightly. Eleanor held tight to the steering wheel, trying to maintain control. Her business-experienced mind always found solutions to the most difficult crises, but now, amid nature's fury, she felt small and vulnerable. The diary on the passenger seat fell to the car floor, opening to a different page. Even while concentrating on driving, Eleanor couldn't help but notice a familiar date written at the top. It was the same day she and Walter had met, 45 years ago. The coincidence made her stomach knot. Walter's words from that morning echoed in her mind. What's left for us besides a house full of silence? How many times had she come home late, lost in meetings and numbers, while he waited for her with dinner ready? How many wedding anniversaries had been hastily celebrated between one business trip and another? A metallic noise coming from the engine yanked her from her reflections. The car was beginning to lose power, and the accumulated snow on the road made driving increasingly difficult. Eleanor realized she was reaching the highest and most isolated point of the journey, where century-old trees created a natural tunnel over the road. It was then that she noticed something strange through the windshield, a diffuse bluish light that seemed to dance among the snowflakes. For a moment, she thought she was having a hallucination caused by fatigue and cold. The light seemed to call to her, guiding her through the snowstorm like a beacon in the midst of the tempest. Eleanor's heart beat faster and faster. Years of business experience had taught her to trust her instincts, and now they were all screaming that something extraordinary was about to happen. The car lights flickered one last time before going out completely, leaving her only with that mysterious blue luminescence as a guide. Amid the chaos of the storm, Eleanor began to understand that this trip was turning into something much bigger than a simple escape from a marital argument. The mountains of Aspen held deeper secrets than she had ever imagined, and now, isolated and vulnerable, she was about to discover some of them. The bluish light continued to dance in front of the car when Eleanor felt the vehicle skid violently. In a matter of seconds, everything transformed into a whirlwind of snow and motion. The car spun out of control, sliding off the road and down a small slope until it was stopped by two robust trees. The impact threw Eleanor against the back seat, leaving her dazed and confused. The intense cold began to infiltrate through all the cracks of the damaged vehicle, while snow fell relentlessly outside. She tried to reach for her cell phone, but it had fallen somewhere during the accident, and even if she found it, she knew there was no signal in that remote region. "Walter," she whispered, thinking of the husband she had left at home. How could her last words to him have been so cold? Why did it take such an extreme moment to realize how much she still loved him? Tears began to form in her eyes, freezing before they even reached her cheeks. The diary, which had flown during the impact, landed open near her feet. In the dim light, she managed to distinguish some words. In the mountains, miracles happen when we least expect them. It is in moments of greatest despair that we find our true strength. A soft, rhythmic sound began to approach, like footsteps on the snow. Eleanor held her breath, her heart beating fast. Years of business experience had taught her to stay calm in crisis situations, but nothing in her life had prepared her for this moment. The bluish light she had seen before the accident reappeared, more intense now, illuminating the clearing where the car was stuck. Through the foggy glass, Eleanor distinguished an approaching silhouette. It wasn't human, but it didn't seem threatening either. A medium-sized dog, with golden fur covered in snow, appeared next to the car. Its eyes shone with an almost human wisdom, and its presence brought an inexplicable sense of comfort. The animal began to scratch at the car door, as if it understood the critical situation she was in. With the strength she had left, Eleanor managed to push the door open. The dog immediately approached, its body emanating a comforting warmth. There was something familiar about it, something that harkened back to the rescue stories she had read in the mysterious diary. "You came to help me, didn't you?" she whispered, extending her trembling hand to touch the animal's muzzle. The dog responded with a soft bark, as if confirming her question. In that moment, Eleanor felt a deep connection with the animal, as if it had been sent especially for her. The diary had mentioned cases of miraculous rescues in the Aspen Mountains, but Eleanor had always been a practical woman, who believed more in spreadsheets and numbers than in fantastic stories. Now, however, faced with this extraordinary being, she began to question all her certainties. Gently, the dog began to pull at her sleeve, indicating that they should leave. Eleanor hesitated, the cold and fear paralyzing her movements. But there was something in the animal's gaze that conveyed confidence and determination. It was as if it knew a safe path through the storm. Gathering all her courage, Eleanor held onto the dog's soft fur and began to move. Each step was a battle against the cold and exhaustion, but her canine companion remained steadfast by her side, guiding her with impressive certainty through the deep snow. As they walked, Eleanor began to realize that this experience was changing something fundamental within her. All the concerns about business, all the misunderstandings with Walter, now seemed so small in the face of the grandeur of this moment. The mountains were teaching her a lesson that no boardroom could ever teach. The bluish light continued to shine, now seeming to emanate from the dog itself, creating a luminous path through the storm. It was as if time had stopped, and there existed only this moment, a woman and her unlikely savior, united in a surreal journey through the snow-covered mountains of Aspen. The walk through the deep snow seemed endless. The dog, which Eleanor instinctively began to call Hero, guided her with supernatural determination. At each difficult step it turned to her, as if wanting to ensure she still had the strength to continue. The blue light that enveloped them created a kind of protective bubble against the fury of the storm. During the journey, fragments of memory began to surface in Eleanor's mind. She remembered a story her grandmother used to tell about a mysterious dog that appeared in the Aspen Mountains to save people in danger. At the time, she considered it just a legend to entertain children, but now, reality seemed more fantastic than any tale. "My grandmother was right all along," murmured Eleanor, her voice almost lost in the wind. Hero turned to her, its eyes shining with an intelligence that went beyond human comprehension. It was then that she remembered something crucial. The diary found in the trunk had her grandmother's handwriting. The revelation hit her like lightning. Years ago, her grandmother had been one of the main rescue organizers in the region. The stories she told weren't just folk tales, but real experiences, documented in that mysterious diary that had somehow reached her car exactly when she needed it most. Hero suddenly stopped, its ears alert. On the white horizon, a different light began to form. It wasn't the same bluish luminescence that accompanied them, but something more earthly, more real. A car headlight cut through the curtain of snow, slowly approaching. Eleanor's heart raced. After so long in the cold, the possibility of rescue seemed almost like a dream. However, the driver of the approaching vehicle showed hesitation upon seeing the unusual scene. An elderly lady next to a glowing dog in the midst of a snowstorm. It was at this moment that Eleanor recognized the driver. It was Charles, an old family friend who had known her grandmother. He had always been involved in voluntary rescues in the region, keeping alive the legacy of the Aspen Mountain rescuers. "Mrs. Thompson?" Charles's voice cut through the silence of the storm. "I can't believe it. I was just thinking about you. Something told me to check this road today, even with the terrible weather." As Charles approached to help her, Eleanor noticed that Hero maintained a protective posture by her side. The dog and Charles exchanged a look of mutual recognition, as if sharing an ancestral secret of the mountains. "This dog," Charles began, his voice trembling slightly. "It has been appearing for generations in Aspen. Your grandmother mentioned it several times in the diary. She called it the Mountain Guardian." Charles's words confirmed what Eleanor was already beginning to suspect. There was something mystical and inexplicable in the Aspen Mountains, something that transcended normal human understanding. Her grandmother's diary wasn't just a record of rescues, but a testament to the magic that still existed in that place. As Charles helped her into his heated car, Eleanor looked once more at Hero. The dog remained there, its majestic figure standing out against the white of the snow. The blue light that enveloped it was beginning to diminish, but its eyes maintained that special gleam of wisdom. "Your grandmother always said that the mountains choose how and when to teach us their lessons," said Charles, turning the heater up to maximum. "Sometimes we need to get lost to find our true path." At that moment, Eleanor understood that her adventure in the mountains had not been an accident. It was a calling, an awakening to truths that had been dormant in her heart. Her grandmother's diary had reached her not by chance, but because the time had come to rediscover the true meaning of family, love, and courage. In Charles's heated car, Eleanor held tightly to her grandmother's diary, its yellowed pages now seeming even more precious. As they slowly traveled along the snow-covered road, Charles began to share stories that further connected the dots of the extraordinary family history Eleanor was discovering. "Your grandmother, Mrs. Helen, was known as the Guardian of Stories," revealed Charles, keeping his eyes fixed on the road as the snowstorm began to diminish. "She not only coordinated rescues, but also kept alive the memory of the inexplicable events that happened in these mountains." Eleanor opened the diary to a random page and began to read aloud. "Today, the Guardian appeared again. As always, its eyes carried the wisdom of ages. It guided us to 2 children lost in the storm. Some say it's just a dog, but I know it's much more than that. It's the very essence of these mountains transformed into physical form. Exactly as your grandmother wrote," continued Charles, "Hero is not an ordinary dog. It has been appearing for generations, always with the same appearance, always in the most crucial moments. Some say it's the same dog. Others believe it's a spirit that manifests when needed." The car passed through a particularly difficult curve, and Eleanor saw, through the rearview mirror, Hero's silhouette still following them at a distance, its blue light less intense but still visible in the dusk of the approaching afternoon. "But why did the diary appear in my car today of all days?" asked Eleanor, her voice laden with emotion. "And why did I never know about this part of my family's history?" Charles smiled gently. "Your grandmother always said there are right moments for each revelation. Perhaps you needed to go through this experience to truly understand your family's legacy." Continuing to leaf through the diary, Eleanor found an old photo. In it, her grandmother Helena stood next to a dog identical to Hero, with the same blue light surrounding him. The date on the back of the photo was from 50 years ago. "Your grandmother wasn't just a rescue coordinator," explained Charles. "She was a guardian of ancient secrets, of stories that demonstrate there's more mystery and magic in the world than we imagine. And now, Eleanor, it seems it's your turn to become part of this story." Charles's words made Eleanor reflect on her own life choices. How much time had she dedicated solely to business, forgetting the stories and traditions of her family? How many times had she dismissed Walter's attempts to make her slow down and appreciate life's mysteries? "Your grandmother always said that true success isn't measured by money or power," continued Charles, as if reading her thoughts. "She believed that success lay in the ability to keep the magic of the world alive, to recognize the miracles that happen every day." As the car advanced along the now more visible road, Eleanor began to understand that her accident in the mountains hadn't been just a frightening incident but a call from destiny. It was as if her grandmother, through the diary and Hero's mysterious intervention, was trying to show her a different path. "What should I do now?" asked Eleanor, more to herself than to Charles. "Your grandmother always said that answers come when we're ready to hear them," he replied. And from what I see, the mountains have chosen this moment to show you something important. The sun was beginning to set when they spotted the first houses of Zakopane. The blizzard had diminished considerably, leaving the sky with shades of pink and orange that reflected on the snow. Eleanor looked back one last time, but Hero had disappeared, leaving only his footprints in the snow as proof of his existence. When Charles's car finally stopped in front of Eleanor's house, the living room lights were on, projecting a welcoming glow through the frost-covered windows. Walter was on the porch, his face marked with worry transformed into relief upon seeing her. In his hands, he held an object that made Eleanor's eyes widen. It was another diary identical to the one she had found in the trunk. "I found this afternoon, hidden in an old box in the attic," explained Walter, hurriedly descending the porch steps to help her. "When I saw you weren't coming back and the storm got worse, I started looking for anything that might give me a clue to where you might be. I never imagined I'd find something like this." Charles observed the scene with a serene smile, as if he perfectly understood what was happening. "The diaries always appear in pairs," he commented. "Your grandmother left one for each grandchild, but they only reveal themselves at the right moment." Eleanor looked at the two diaries, now side by side in her hands. They were identical in appearance, but upon opening them, she realized they contained different, complementary stories. While one narrated the rescues and encounters with the mysterious hero, the other contained deep reflections on love, family, and the true meaning of success. "Why did you never tell me about this?" Eleanor asked Walter, her voice trembling slightly. "Your grandmother made me promise to keep it a secret," he replied, guiding her into the house. "She said you would need to discover it for yourself at the right time, and from what I see in your eyes, that time has come." In the warm living room, Rachel Lima, the famous rescue dog trainer of the region, was waiting for them. Her face showed a mixture of anxiety and reverence. "When Charles called me telling me about the Guardian, I knew I needed to be here," she explained. "I've been studying the stories about this mysterious dog for years, but I never imagined I would witness something like this." Seated in her favorite armchair, with a cup of hot tea in her hands, Eleanor began to share her experience. Each word made Walter and Rachel exchange significant looks, as if some pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. "Your grandmother always said that true love is like the mountains," said Walter, sitting beside her. "Sometimes it seems intimidating and distant, but it's always there, solid and unwavering, protecting us, even when we don't realize it." Rachel leaned forward, her eyes shining with curiosity. "The records I have show appearances of the Guardian for over 100 years. Always in the most critical situations, always guiding people back home. But there's something different this time. He chose to reveal himself to you in a very special way." Charles, who had accepted the invitation to come in and warm up, added, "Your grandmother used to say that the Guardian doesn't just save lives, he saves souls. He appears when people need not just physical rescue, but a spiritual awakening." Eleanor looked at Walter, seeing him in a new light. How many times had he tried to show her that there was more to life than meetings and financial statements? How many times had she ignored his requests for more time together, more moments of simplicity and connection? "There's something else you need to know," said Rachel, pulling out an old envelope from her bag. "I found this in the archives of the Zakopane Rescue Society. It's a letter from your grandmother, Eleanor, addressed specifically for this moment." Silence filled the room as Rachel handed the envelope to Eleanor. The paper was yellowed with time, but the red wax seal remained intact, as if it had been patiently waiting for this exact moment to reveal its secrets. With trembling hands, Eleanor broke the red wax seal of the envelope. The soft scent of lavender, her grandmother's favorite fragrance, still lingered on the aged paper. Everyone in the room maintained a reverent silence as she unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. "My dear Eleanor, if you are reading this letter, it means that the Guardian of the Mountains has finally revealed himself to you. I know you must be confused and full of questions, but I also know that your heart has already begun to understand truths that your mind is still trying to process. You have always been like me, my granddaughter, determined, focused, with an inner strength that moves mountains. But just as I learned, there are moments when we need to stop moving the mountains and learn to listen to them. The Guardian doesn't appear by chance. He is a messenger of truths we desperately need to hear. The two diaries now in your hands are part of a legacy greater than you can imagine. For generations, our family has been guardian not just of stories, but of an ancient wisdom that connects the material world to the spiritual. The first diary tells the stories of the rescues, but the second reveals their true purpose. Rachel, if you are present as I foresaw, you have a fundamental role in this story. The Guardian chose you long ago to be his earthly protector. I know you understand what this means. Rachel nodded, silent tears streaming down her face. Eleanor continued reading. Walter, my dear son-in-law, thank you for keeping your vow of silence all these years. Your patience and unconditional love for Eleanor were crucial for this moment to arrive. You always knew there was something greater waiting, and you never lost faith. Charles, old friend, continue to be the guardian of Zakopane's traditions. Your stories keep alive the magic that so many insist on forgetting in these modern times. Eleanor, my beloved granddaughter, now it's your turn. The business empire you built is impressive, but your true legacy will be much greater. The Guardian chose you to be the next guardian of stories. It's no coincidence that he appeared just when you needed to reconnect with what really matters. In the coming days, you will discover that you possess gifts you never imagined having. The Guardian has awakened something in you that was dormant, waiting for the right moment to bloom. Rachel will help you understand and develop these gifts. Always remember, love is the greatest magic that exists. It manifests in many forms, in Walter's patient gaze, in Charles's loyalty, in Rachel's dedication, and in the Guardian's ancestral wisdom. It's never too late to open your heart to this magic. The diary you found in the trunk didn't appear by chance. Like the one Walter found in the attic, they are keys to a world that has always existed parallel to ours, waiting to be rediscovered by those who are ready to see beyond the veil of common reality. I know you have the discernment necessary to use this knowledge wisely. The mountains of Zakopane hold deeper secrets than most people imagine, and now you are part of them. With all my love and trust, Grandma Helena P.S. The Guardian goes by many names throughout the centuries, but his true name is the one your heart chooses for him. Take good care of him. He will always be near even when you can't see him. When Eleanor finished reading, a deep and significant silence filled the room. Outside, a soft and melodious howl echoed through the night, as if the Guardian himself was confirming Helena's words. The next morning, Eleanor woke up with a different sensation. The world seemed more vivid, richer in details that previously went unnoticed. The ice crystals on the windows formed patterns that told stories, and the wind in the trees whispered ancient melodies that somehow she was beginning to understand. Rachel arrived early, bringing with her a serene and determined energy. Your grandmother prepared me for this moment, she explained, as they settled in the living room with the two diaries open on the table. The gifts you possess are unique, Eleanor. Just like each guardian before you, your connection with the mountains will manifest in its own way. Walter observed everything with a calm smile, serving tea for both of them in ancient cups that had belonged to Helena. Your grandmother used to say these cups were special, he commented. She said that the tea served in them helped awaken inner vision. As she savored the tea, Eleanor felt a wave of warmth spread through her body, followed by a mental clarity she had never experienced before. The words in the diaries, previously just interesting accounts, now seemed to pulse with life of their own. Close your eyes, Rachel gently instructed. Let the mountains speak to you. Your grandmother used to say that each guardian has a unique way of connecting with the ancient energy of Zakopane. Eleanor obeyed, and was immediately flooded with images and sensations. She saw her grandmother, young and radiant, walking through the same mountains she knew so well. She saw the guardian in different eras guiding lost people back home. More surprisingly, she began to understand the silent language of the mountains. It's extraordinary, she whispered, opening her eyes. It's as if I could see through time, as if the mountains were showing me their memories. This is your special gift, explained Rachel, her eyes shining with emotion. Your grandmother could hear the stories. I can sense the guardian's presence, but you, Eleanor, you can see through the veils of time. It's a rare and precious gift. Walter approached, holding Eleanor's hand affectionately. Now I understand why Helena insisted so much that you discover this on your own. Some truths need to be experienced to be truly understood. A soft bark caught everyone's attention. At the door of the living room, the guardian was seated, his blue light now visible even during the day, his wise eyes fixed on Eleanor with a look of recognition and approval. He's different, observed Rachel, amazed. The connection between you has changed. It's as if you now share the same purpose." Eleanor stood up and walked to the guardian, who slightly tilted his head towards her. As she touched his golden fur, a wave of images and emotions invaded her. She saw generations of her family, all connected by the same sacred purpose of protecting and preserving the mysteries of the mountains. "The stories," Eleanor murmured as the visions continued, "they're not just accounts of the past, they're bridges between times, between worlds. Each rescue, each appearance of the Guardian is part of a larger fabric, a tapestry of interwoven destinies." Rachel nodded, moved. "Your grandmother foresaw this, or she knew that your business experience, your ability to see patterns and connections, would be crucial for your role as Guardian." The Guardian gracefully stood up and walked to the window, where snow continued to fall softly. His gaze seemed to pierce through the white landscape, as if observing something beyond the visible horizon. The following weeks brought profound changes to Eleanor's life. Under Rachel's guidance, and with Walter's unconditional support, she began to explore and develop her newly discovered gifts. The ability to see through time wasn't just a mystical skill, it was a responsibility that required balance and wisdom. One morning, while organizing her schedule, Eleanor made a transformative decision. She called her executive team for an extraordinary meeting and announced that she would be restructuring the company to dedicate more time to personal projects. To her surprise, the news was received with understanding and even relief from her longtime employees. "You've always taken such good care of us," said her assistant of 2 decades. "It's more than time to take care of yourself." At home, the relationship with Walter blossomed in a way that hadn't happened in years. The nights were filled with deep conversations, sharing stories from the past and dreams for the future. The silence that had previously separated them was replaced by a renewed intimacy, strengthened by the mutual understanding of being part of something extraordinary. "You know," Walter said one night, as they watched the snow fall outside the window, "your grandmother once told me that true love is like the Guardian, sometimes invisible to ordinary eyes, but always present, guiding and protecting." Rachel became a constant presence in their lives, bringing with her not just knowledge about the mysteries of the mountains, but also a friendship that seemed predestined. Together, they began to organize the old records, combining the stories from the diaries with Eleanor's visions to create a complete archive of Zakopane's mystical events. The Guardian appeared with increasing frequency, not just in moments of need, but as a constant companion in their discoveries. His presence brought with it a peace that Eleanor had never experienced before, even in the calmest moments of her business life. "It's fascinating," Rachel commented during one of their study sessions. "The Guardian has never shown himself so present to any other Guardian before. It's as if you two share a special connection, something beyond normal even by Zakopane's mystical standards." One day, while walking through the mountains with the Guardian by her side, Eleanor had a particularly powerful vision. She saw her grandmother, young and radiant, writing in one of the diaries. The words seemed to float off the page. "True power lies not in controlling destiny, but in understanding our role in it." The vision led her to an important decision. With Walter's support and Rachel's guidance, Eleanor began to transform an entire wing of her house into a center for studying and preserving Zakopane's stories. The walls were covered with ancient maps and historical photographs, each telling a part of the rich tapestry of mysteries that enveloped the region. Charles, who continued to be a vital link with the local community, began to bring people interested in learning about the ancient traditions. Eleanor discovered she had a natural gift for sharing the stories, not just through words, but by allowing others to feel, through her own connection with the mountains, the magic that permeated that place. "You're becoming more than a guardian," Rachel observed with admiration. "You're becoming a bridge between the ancient world and the new, exactly as your grandmother predicted." The Guardian, always present, seemed to approve of each step of this transformation. His blue light, previously visible only at specific moments, now seemed a natural part of the house's landscape, as if the boundaries between the mystical and the mundane were slowly dissolving. Spring arrived in Zakopane, melting the snow and revealing a renewed world. In Eleanor's house, the study center had transformed into a meeting place for people from all parts of the world, attracted by the mystical stories of the mountains and the extraordinary presence of the Guardian. Rachel had developed a special training program for rescue dogs, incorporating ancient knowledge with modern techniques. The Guardian actively participated in these sessions, demonstrating a unique ability to communicate with the other animals and their trainers. "It's incredible how he manages to transmit knowledge," Rachel commented during a training session. "It's as if each dog that passes through here takes with it a spark of ancient wisdom." Walter, who had initially remained more reserved regarding the mystical activities, was now an enthusiastic participant. His ability to organize and document the experiences had become fundamental in preserving the knowledge that was being rediscovered. "You know," he said to Eleanor one afternoon, as they organized new records, "I never imagined our life would take this turn, but now I can't imagine doing anything else." The center also attracted the attention of researchers and scholars of inexplicable phenomena. Eleanor, with her business experience and her new mystical gift, managed to perfectly balance academic skepticism with respect for ancient traditions. A young researcher, after witnessing one of Eleanor's vision sessions, commented emotionally, "It's as if you found the exact frequency where history and mystery meet." Eleanor's visions continued to develop, becoming clearer and more significant. Through them, she began to understand that the role of the Guardian and the Guardians went far beyond simple physical rescues. It was a mission of preserving the very essence of magic in the modern world. One day, while walking with the Guardian through the property's gardens, Eleanor had a particularly powerful vision. She saw future generations continuing the work she was beginning, each adding their own understanding and wisdom to the legacy. "The mountains choose us," she explained later to a group of visitors, "not to guard their secrets, but to share their wisdom with those who are ready to receive it." Charles, who now coordinated visits to the center, noticed a significant change in the region. "People are different," he commented. "It's as if the presence of the center and the Guardian was awakening something dormant in all of us." Eleanor's work began to attract attention from other mountain communities around the world. Similar stories began to emerge of mystical guardians, of ancestral connections with nature, of ancient wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. "How your grandmother always said that Zakopane was just the beginning," Rachel revealed during one of their long nighttime conversations. She knew that a time would come when the world would be ready to rediscover its connection to the mystical. The Guardian, always present, seemed especially pleased with these developments. His blue light, once a rare and mysterious phenomenon, was now seen frequently throughout the region, as if his energy was expanding along with the influence of the center. Walter, observing all these changes, embraced Eleanor affectionately. "You've transformed our life into something extraordinary," he said. "And the most incredible thing is that this is just the beginning." That night, sitting in her office with her grandmother's diaries open before her, Eleanor understood that she had found something much greater than business success. She had found her true purpose. On an especially clear morning, Eleanor found a loose page among her grandmother's diaries. It was a kind of prophecy, written in a handwriting different from the usual, as if Helena had been in an altered state of consciousness when she wrote it. "When the time is ripe and the heart is open, the last Guardian will not be the last, but the first of a new lineage. The Guardian will multiply, and the magic once hidden in the shadows of the mountains will bloom in broad daylight." As she read these words, Eleanor felt a familiar energy course through her body. The Guardian appeared by her side, his blue light more intense than ever. Through their special connection, she understood that she was about to witness something extraordinary. Rachel arrived at the house hurriedly, her eyes shining with excitement. "It's happening," she announced. "All over Zakopane, people are reporting visions of blue lights in the mountains. And it's not just here. We're receiving reports of similar phenomena in mountainous regions all over the world." Walter and Charles joined them in the garden, where the Guardian was waiting for them. The sky began to fill with an out-of-season aurora borealis, painting the horizon with curtains of light that danced in shades of blue and silver. "Your grandmother predicted this," said Rachel, her voice trembling with emotion. "She knew that a time would come when magic would no longer need to hide. And you, Eleanor, were chosen to be the catalyst for this change." The Guardian began to emit an even more intense light, and for the first time, Eleanor heard his voice, not with her ears, but with her heart. It was a voice as old as the mountains and as soft as snow, revealing truths that had been dormant for generations. "The times are changing," Eleanor translated for the others. The world is rediscovering its connection to the mystical, not through great revelations, but through small daily miracles. And each person who opens themselves to this truth becomes a guardian in their own way. At that moment, as if responding to a silent call, dogs of different breeds and sizes began to appear in the garden. Each of them emanated a soft blue light, similar to the guardians but unique in its own way. "It's incredible," whispered Rachel, amazed. "They're like extensions of the guardian, each destined to help and protect in their own way." Walter, who was observing the scene with tears in his eyes, hugged Eleanor. "Your grandmother always said that love has many forms. Now I understand that she wasn't just talking about human feelings, but about a much deeper connection with the world around us." Charles, who had spent decades documenting the mysteries of Zakopane, began to photograph the extraordinary event. "People need to see this," he said. "Not to believe in magic, but to remember that there's more to the world than our eyes can see." The study center had transformed into a beacon of hope and knowledge, attracting people who felt a similar calling. Each visitor took with them not just stories to tell, but a spark of the same light that now illuminated the mountains. Eleanor understood that her journey wasn't ending, but just beginning. Her grandmother's legacy wasn't just about preserving ancient traditions, but about paving the way for a new way of seeing and interacting with the world. A year after the extraordinary manifestation of the Guardians, Zakopane had transformed. Eleanor's study center now occupied an entire complex, with wings dedicated to rescue dog training, mystical phenomena research, and preservation of ancient traditions. More importantly, it had become a meeting point for people who, like her, had discovered their own special gifts. On a particularly significant morning, Eleanor was in her office finalizing her own diary, the third in the series started by her grandmother. Walter entered silently, bringing 2 cups of the special tea that Helena had so appreciated. "You look like your grandmother when you write," he commented affectionately. "You have the same gleam in your eyes, the same energy around you." Eleanor smiled, realizing how completely her life had changed. The power and prestige she had sought so much in the business world now seemed a distant part of her past. Her true fulfillment came from something much deeper and more meaningful. Rachel arrived for their daily meeting, accompanied by a group of new trainers. Each of them had been chosen by one of the Guardians, the mysterious dogs that now populated the mountains of Zakopane and other regions of the world. "It's amazing how each Guardian chooses exactly the right person," Rachel observed. "It's as if they could see through our souls and recognize potentials that we didn't even know ourselves." The original Guardian, whom Eleanor now affectionately called Hero, continued to be a constant presence in her life. His blue light, once a mystery, had become a symbol of hope and transformation for the entire community. Charles, who had expanded his documentation work to include reports from all over the world, shared his latest discoveries. "The stories are all different, but they share the same essence. People rediscovering their connection to the mystical, learning to see beyond the veil of everyday life." In the afternoon, Eleanor conducted a special session at the center. Visitors from various countries gathered to share their experiences and learn about the mysteries of the mountains. Among them was a young woman who reminded Eleanor very much of herself in her youth, focused only on material success, but with a dormant potential for something much greater. "Sometimes," Eleanor said to the group, "we need to get lost to find our true path. The mountains teach us that true strength is not in controlling life, but in flowing with it, in recognizing the magic that exists in every moment." Walter, observing his wife with admiration, realized how their love had transformed and strengthened through this extraordinary journey. They were no longer just husband and wife, but partners in a mission greater than themselves. At the end of the day, as the sun set over the mountains of Zakopane, Eleanor, Walter, Rachel, and Charles gathered in the garden. Hero and his mystical companions formed a circle around them, their blue lights creating a spectacle of rare beauty. "Your grandmother would be proud," said Charles, moved. "You haven't just preserved her legacy, but expanded it in ways she only dreamed were possible." Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling the energy of the mountains flowing through her. Her journey had begun with an argument and an accident in the snowy mountains, but it had transformed into something much greater, a rediscovery not just of herself, but of the very meaning of magic and purpose. "The world is changing," she said softly, And each of us has a role to play in this transformation. Magic never ceased to exist. It just waited patiently for us to be ready to see it again. Dear listeners, Eleanor's journey shows us that magic exists not only in the mountains of Zakopane, but in each of us. To continue discovering extraordinary stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like. Share in the comments your own mystical experiences. After all, each of us has a bit of guardian inside. We'll meet in the next story, where more mysteries and revelations await us.